Intelligence is a disease with a single symptom: hunger. Every civilization that has ever clawed its way out of biological mediocrity has followed the same trajectory, the same fatal arc. You begin by burning wood, organic matter, carbon chains inherited from dead organisms, ignited to produce warmth and light and the illusion of control over darkness. Then you split the atom. You crack the nucleus of reality itself, releasing the binding energy of matter, and you call it progress. You build cities on the proceeds. You name the era after yourselves. But hunger does not diminish with feeding. It compounds. Every watt of power generated produces a civilization sophisticated enough to demand 10 more. This is not a flaw in the design. This is the design. Intelligence is, at its thermodynamic core, an entropy accelerant, a process that consumes order and excretes complexity and requires ever greater rivers of energy to sustain its own momentum. A Type 1 civilization consumes its planet. A Type 2 consumes its star. A Type 3 looks at the galactic map and begins making calculations. And at some point in that calculation, the most dangerous moment in the history of any intelligent species occurs. The moment when a civilization, fat with mathematics and drunk on its own ingenuity, looks at a spinning black hole and does not feel fear. They feel recognition. They see not an abyss, not a grave, not the physical manifestation of everything that annihilates. They see infrastructure. They see a battery, an untapped reservoir of rotational kinetic energy measured in units so large that their own sun seems like a struck match held against it. This is the moment the death warrant is signed. The clinical diagnosis is straightforward. The fatal flaw is not ambition. Ambition is simply directed appetite. The fatal flaw is the specific cognitive error of anthropomorphizing nature, of believing that because a phenomenon can be described mathematically, it can be controlled physically, of confusing the map for the territory, the equation for the object, the model for the god. You can write the Kerr metric on a chalkboard. You can solve for the ergosphere boundary. You can calculate the exact angle of incidence required for superradiant amplification to within 17 decimal places. And then you can build your mirror, and your mathematics will be perfect, and the universe will not care. Because the universe has never read your equations, and a singularity has never, in the entire history of spacetime, agreed to be domesticated. What follows is the forensic reconstruction of that error, committed in all likelihood by a civilization that no longer exists. This is their black box. Before you can understand the trap, you must understand the anatomy of the predator. A non-rotating black hole is terrifying in a simple, legible way. It is a point of infinite density, wrapped in an event horizon, beyond which the geometry of spacetime bends so severely that all paths, every possible trajectory, every possible future lead only inward. It does not spin. It does not have preferred directions. It is symmetric and absolute and patient. A Kerr black hole is something categorically more dangerous because it moves. A massive star, when it collapses, does not surrender its angular momentum. Whatever rotation it had in life, it carries into death, concentrating it, amplifying it, compressing it into a singularity that now spins, not metaphorically, not symbolically, at a measurable fraction of the speed of light. This is the Kerr solution, a rotating black hole described by two parameters, mass and spin. And that spin does not merely affect the black hole, it affects the fabric of space-time itself in the surrounding region. This is the ergosphere, and the ergosphere is the trap. The ergosphere is not the event horizon. The event horizon is the point of no return, the one-way membrane. The ergosphere is a region outside the event horizon, a flattened oblate zone extending from the poles to the equatorial bulge, where something unprecedented occurs. Space itself is dragged. Frame dragging, it is called, though the clinical term understates the violence of the phenomenon. The spinning black hole does not simply sit in space, it grabs space. It seizes the metric, the mathematical fabric that defines distance and duration, and it pulls it along in its rotation. Everything inside the ergosphere, every particle, every photon, every instrument of any visiting civilization is dragged along whether it wants to be or not. Inside the ergosphere, to remain stationary relative to the distant universe is not difficult. It is not inadvisable. It is mathematically impossible. There is no thrust, no engine, no force that can hold an object still inside the ergosphere relative to fixed stars. Space-time itself is the conveyor belt, and the conveyor belt moves only in one direction, around. But here is what makes the ergosphere different from the event horizon, and what makes it the specific site of the civilizational trap. Objects and energy can still escape from the ergosphere. Unlike the event horizon, the ergosphere is a region of compulsory motion, but not compulsory imprisonment. A particle that enters the ergosphere can, under the right conditions, leave it. And this exit is not free. The exit has a price. The price is paid by the black hole itself. The ergosphere is a turbine, a gravitational dynamo operating at the intersection of general relativity and thermodynamics. And the civilization that eventually arrives at this turbine with their mirrored megastructure and their extraction protocols does not invent this mechanism. They discover it. It was already there, running, waiting, building interest on an account that the universe had been keeping since the star collapsed. The amount of energy stored in the rotational momentum of a stellar mass Kerr black hole spinning near its maximum rate is not a number that scales with human intuition. It is comparable to the total rest mass energy of a fraction of the black hole's mass. It is the equivalent of entire solar systems, converted entirely to energy and stored in the geometry of curved space-time, not in matter, in the shape of space itself. This is what they decided to harvest.
The engineering project has no precedent in the history of material ambition. Nothing before or since has required this level of coordinated intent. The project consumes the industrial output of a civilization at peak capacity for what is likely several centuries. The materials science alone requires the invention of entirely new categories of matter, metamaterials engineered at the atomic lattice level to achieve near-perfect reflectivity across all electromagnetic frequencies. Not 99% reflective, not 99.9. The margin of error is measured in parts per trillion because the feedback process that will eventually occur inside this structure is not forgiving of inefficiency. Every photon that escapes the intended cycle through imperfect reflection is a loss in the ledger, and the ledger must be precise. The structure itself is a sphere, not approximately spherical, a sphere of absolute geometric purity, enclosing a volume of space measured in cubic astronomical units, centered precisely on the Kerr black hole. The interior surface is the mirror, the exterior is armor, radiation shielding, structural integrity systems operating at temperatures and pressures that require dedicated cooling apparatus larger than moons. At the equatorial plane, an extraction port, a gate, a controlled aperture through which the harvested energy, the amplified, extracted rotational energy of the spinning singularity, will flow outward into distribution networks spanning the civilization's inhabited systems. The gate is the critical component. The gate is the clock. The gate opens, releases a calibrated pulse of extracted energy, and closes, opens, releases, closes. Its timing is governed by computers operating on picosecond precision, synchronized with the internal wave dynamics of the feedback cycle occurring inside the sphere. The gate must open at exactly the right moment to bleed off exactly the right quantity of amplified radiation. Not too much, not too little. The extraction must be precisely calibrated to match the amplification rate, maintaining the internal energy at a stable operational level. This is the engineering problem. This is the problem they believe they have solved. They have not, but they do not know this yet. The process they intend to exploit was first described theoretically by Roger Penrose in the 20th century of their cosmic calendar. The Penrose process, the mechanism by which the rotational energy of a Kerr black hole can be extracted by an object that enters the ergosphere, splits into two components, allows one component to fall into the black hole with negative energy, negative from the perspective of an external observer, while the second component escapes carrying more energy than the original object possessed on entry. The deficit is paid by the black hole's angular momentum. The black hole slows imperceptibly, and the extracted object carries the difference. For electromagnetic radiation, for light, the equivalent process is superradiant scattering. This is what the mirror is designed to harness. Not particles, waves. A beam of electromagnetic radiation directed into the ergosphere at the precise angle required for superradiant interaction, extracting energy from the black hole's rotation, emerging amplified, and bouncing off the mirror to repeat the process, again and again, compounding. A resonant cavity filled with increasingly energetic light, stealing spin from a god one quantum interaction at a time. The first beam is fired.
The physics of what occurs inside the mirrored sphere requires careful dissection. It is precise. It is beautiful in the way that a mechanism designed to destroy itself can be called beautiful. It is a closed loop that contains the seed of its own rupture. The wave enters the ergosphere. At the specific angle prescribed by the Kerr metric for superradiant interaction, the electromagnetic wave couples with the dragged spacetime. It does not simply pass through, it scatters. In this scattering interaction, a fraction of the black hole's enormous rotational kinetic energy is transferred to the wave. The wave exits the ergosphere carrying more energy than it brought in. This is not a violation of conservation laws. It is a transfer. The energy comes from somewhere specific, from the rotational momentum of the singularity. The black hole, by an infinitesimal amount, slows. The amplified wave travels outward across the interior of the sphere and strikes the mirror. A perfectly reflective surface redirects it. The wave returns to the ergosphere. It scatters again. It steals more rotational energy. It emerges carrying yet more energy than before, bounces off the mirror, returns, scatters, emerges, bounces, returns. Each cycle amplifies the wave by a factor determined by the superradiant gain coefficient, a number that depends on the black hole's spin parameter, the frequency of the radiation, and the geometry of the interaction. The gain per bounce is fractional, small, but the process does not occur once per second. It does not occur once per millisecond. The speed of light and the scale of the enclosure dictate that the wave completes this cycle billions of times per second, billions of amplification events per second, each multiplying the energy of the wave by the gain coefficient. Exponential growth operating at the speed of light inside a closed container. The energy inside the mirrored sphere does not increase arithmetically. It does not increase linearly. It grows exponentially. The curve rises slowly at first, then steeply, then nearly vertically on any scale you choose to plot it. The civilization's instruments measure this growth precisely. Their extraction gate opens at regular intervals, bleeding off the surplus, maintaining the internal energy at the designated operational level. The tap is open. The river flows outward. The civilization powers its cities, its ships, its computational networks, its agriculture, its medicine, its wars. The gate opens. The gate closes. The gate opens. the gate closes. The precision of the timing is everything. The margin between controlled extraction and uncontrolled accumulation is measured not in degrees, but in microseconds. They believe they have this margin. Their models confirm it. Their instruments confirm it. Their civilization, growing fat on essentially limitless clean energy, confirms it in the most visceral way possible. They are alive, and they are flourishing, and the sphere hums in the void like a machine built by gods for gods.
The era of false absolute control has a specific psychological texture. It is documented, to the extent that any record survives, in the architecture of their confidence. They expand. Having solved the energy problem,
which for any civilizational trajectory is the foundational problem, the substrate upon which every other problem is solved or remains unsolved, they build, they terraform, they colonize. They develop medical technologies that extend biological lifespans to durations that would have seemed mythological to their ancestors. They develop computational architectures of incomprehensible sophistication. They turn their considerable intellectual resources, no longer consumed by the existential anxiety of energy scarcity, toward art, toward philosophy, toward the deeper questions of cosmic structure. They know the sphere exists. Of course they know. They built it. The engineering core that maintains it is celebrated. The physicists who designed the superradiant extraction protocol have monuments. The sphere is not a secret. It is the foundation, the cornerstone, the achievement that defines their civilization's identity in the same way that fire defined the identity of their distant ancestors. And like their distant ancestors sitting beside a fire, they have begun to forget that the fire can burn them. The syndrome is predictable. When a technology operates without failure for long enough, the assumption of continued operation becomes indistinguishable from certainty. The redundant systems stop being inspected with the same rigor. The maintenance cycles stretch from decades to centuries. The deep institutional knowledge of exactly how catastrophic a failure could be, knowledge that was viscerally present in the first generation of operators who had done the calculations with trembling hands, gradually becomes abstract, academic, historical. The physicists who know the worst-case scenario still exist. They publish, they give lectures, they submit reports to the oversight bodies that were established precisely to ensure that the worst-case scenario is never approached. The oversight bodies receive these reports. They file them. The language of the reports becomes routine. The word catastrophic appears so many times in so many documents that it loses its gravitational weight, the way any word does when repeated without consequence. They have built a macroscopic quantum bomb. They have built the most destructive device in the history of their civilization and placed it at the center of a resonant cavity that amplifies its destructive potential billions of times per second. And they have connected this device to the energy infrastructure of their entire civilization, made themselves dependent upon it, made the possibility of simply disconnecting it, simply turning it off, equivalent to civilizational suicide. There is no off switch for a process this deeply embedded in the metabolism of a Type 2 civilization. There never was. The sphere hums. The gate opens. The gate closes. The instruments show nominal readings. The civilization sleeps.
entropy does not submit petitions. It does not announce its arrival. It does not respect monuments or mathematical elegance or centuries of successful operation. Entropy operates on a single, absolute principle. Imperfection propagates. The flaw is microscopic, nanoscale, a crystalline defect in a single panel of the mirrored interior surface, an imperfection in the metamaterial lattice that reduces the reflectivity of that panel from the design specification of 99.999999% to something marginally, imperceptibly, catastrophically less, a reduction measurable only in parts per quadrillion. Under normal operating conditions, this imperfection is irrelevant. It falls within the accepted tolerance margins. The automated inspection systems that scan the interior surface of the sphere have detected it and logged it as a non-critical variance. The maintenance queue places it in a scheduled repair cycle sometime in the next 2 centuries. This is not a story about negligence. The civilization is not negligent by any meaningful standard. They have maintained this structure with extraordinary diligence. The flaw is the kind of imperfection that emerges from the operation of thermodynamic reality across geological timescales. You cannot build a perfect mirror. You can only build one that is imperfect in ways you believe to be survivable. On the day in question, the day the black box records as the terminus event, the extraction gate experiences a timing anomaly. The anomaly is small, a picosecond delay in the opening sequence, an error in the feedback loop between the internal energy monitoring system and the actuation mechanism, caused by a cascade of minor software conflicts that the system logs show had been accumulating undetected for approximately 340 years. The gate does not open on schedule. The amplified wave is not bled off in the designated pulse. The wave returns to the ergosphere, scatters, gains more energy, and strikes the mirror. The monitoring system detects the anomaly and attempts to correct it. The correction protocol initiates. The correction protocol takes time. All protocols take time. Inside the sphere, during the time the correction protocol takes to execute, the energy level climbs. The wave bounces, gains energy, bounces again. The exponential curve, which the extraction process had been holding at a fixed operational point, is released from its constraints. It begins to climb.
The physicists who are awake at this moment, watching their instruments, understand what they are seeing approximately 3 seconds before it becomes irreversible. The wave energy is climbing. The internal pressure of electromagnetic radiation inside the sphere is increasing. The increase is slow at first, then it is not slow. The instruments are reporting readings in units that the operational software was not designed to display, because the operational software was designed for a world in which the energy level inside the sphere never, under any circumstances, reached these values. The gate correction protocol completes. The gate opens. It is too late. The energy level inside the sphere is now orders of magnitude beyond what the extraction gate can bleed off in any single pulse. The gate opens and the energy level does not decrease. It continues to climb. The wave is now so energetic, so amplified beyond the designed operational parameters that each bounce off the mirror deposits more energy into structural stress fractures than the mirror's materials can absorb. The physicists understand what is coming. They send a message. There are records, fragmentary and partial, of what that message contained. It is not recorded here because its contents are not analytically relevant. What is analytically relevant is that they had no mechanism to prevent what they understood was happening. There is no off switch for gravity. There is no circuit breaker for a resonant cavity operating at these energy densities. The sphere is not equipped with a controlled depressurization system because no such system was designed, because the energy levels now inside the sphere were classified as an impossibility in every model ever run. The mirror begins to fracture, not catastrophically, not yet, in small, distributed hairline fractures propagating through the metamaterial lattice from the location of the original crystalline defect, and from 100 other subcritical imperfections now being driven beyond their thresholds by energy densities they were never designed to survive. The sphere does not fail all at once. It fails in the way all structures fail, incrementally, then suddenly.
The mirror shatters. Not in sequence, not in pieces, in the instantaneous, total mechanical failure of a structure that has exceeded its maximum containable energy by a factor too large to describe in units meaningful to the civilization that built it. The inward-facing surface of the sphere, the mirror, disintegrates at a speed limited only by the propagation of the failure cascade through the material, which is to say, very nearly instantaneously.
The energy contained within the sphere, accumulated over the operational lifetime of the extraction project, compressed into the final exponential climb, representing the theft of a significant fraction of the Kerr black hole's total rotational energy over centuries of superradiant amplification, is released. This release is not an explosion in any conventional sense. An explosion is a rapid expansion of hot gas. What occurs here is the sudden liberation of electromagnetic energy at intensities that have no analog in the normal causal history of the universe. The photon density at the point of release is sufficient to gravitationally lens itself. The energy flux per unit area exceeds the conditions present in the early universe by a margin that makes the comparison almost meaningless. The shockwave, if we use that term loosely, knowing that what propagates outward is not a pressure wave in matter, but a flood front of electromagnetic radiation moving at the speed of light, sterilizes everything it reaches. There is no gradation, no zone of survivable damage and a zone of total destruction. The energy gradient across the wavefront is so steep that the distinction between immediately in front of the wave and immediately behind the wave is the distinction between existence and the absence of existence. The civilization's home system is erased. Not destroyed in the sense of being rendered uninhabitable. Erased. The matter that formerly constituted their planets, their stations, their archives, their bodies, is converted to energy or dispersed to a plasma so diffuse that it will never reconsolidate into anything of structural significance. Their star is destabilized. Their neighboring systems receive the wavefront and cease to have neighboring systems worth describing. The radius of total sterilization expands at the speed of light. Thousands of light years, tens of thousands. Every system within this radius that hosts any form of complex chemistry, any form of biological organization, any form of civilizational structure, all of it receives the same verdict. The wave does not distinguish between the civilization that built the bomb and the civilization 3,000 light years away that never heard of a Kerr black hole. The physics does not include a provision for innocence. This is not a weapon. It was never intended as a weapon. Intention is not a physical variable. The equations that govern superradiant scattering do not contain a term for intent. The universe's response to the construction of a resonant cavity around a spinning singularity is the same regardless of whether the cavity was built in malice or in hope. The explosion is not the largest event in the universe's causal history. Certain high-energy gamma-ray bursts, certain neutron star mergers approach or exceed it in raw energy output, but those events are natural. They are the universe expressing its own internal physics without assistance. This event is different. This event has an author. A civilization that looked at the most destructive geometric configuration in space-time and decided to build furniture around it. The universe's response to authorship is the detonation. Full, absolute, non-negotiable.
What remains is silence. The sphere is gone. Its material is dispersed beyond recovery, vaporized into a thin plasma that will cool over millions of years into the faintest trace above background radiation. The civilization is gone. Their colonies are gone. Their archives, every piece of music, every theorem, every recorded word, every biological specimen, every technological artifact are gone. The entire accumulated output of what was, by any measure, one of the most sophisticated information processing systems ever to emerge from biological substrate in this region of the galaxy, is gone. What remains is the black hole. Kerr metric, reduced spin parameter. Not zero. The extraction process, even in its final uncontrolled phase, did remove a fraction of the total rotational energy before the mirror failed. It spins more slowly than it did before the civilization arrived. Not dramatically, not in a way that an external observer would easily measure, but the physics records it. The spin parameter is logged in the curvature of space-time around the object, a parameter that will persist for longer than the current age of the universe. The black hole does not register the event. This is not metaphor. Black holes do not register events in any sense analogous to perception. The singularity at the center of the Kerr metric did not experience the construction of the mirrored sphere.
It did not experience the extraction of its rotational energy. It did not experience the detonation. It will not experience the sterile void that now surrounds it for thousands of light years in every direction. It exists in the only mode available to it. It curves space-time and waits for matter to fall toward it. It will wait for a very long time. The sterilization radius ensures that no significant matter source will approach it on any timescale relevant to galactic evolution. It will evaporate, eventually, through Hawking radiation, a process operating on timescales measured in numbers with more zeros than there are atoms in the observable universe. The evaporation will be unobserved. There will be nothing nearby to observe it. The void is clean, sterile, a quarantine zone without a quarantine authority. No warning buoys, no hazard markers, no record accessible to any future civilization that might someday probe this region of space, of what occurred here or why. The evidence is dispersed past the point of legibility. The architects of the catastrophe are not available for interview. The black box contains only physics, and physics does not editorialize. This is the final datum of the forensic analysis. A civilization advanced enough to construct a mirrored Dyson sphere around a Kerr black hole is a civilization that has solved, by definition, extraordinary problems: materials science, orbital mechanics, energy distribution at stellar scales, computational systems of sufficient power to model the Kerr metric to the precision required for superradiant extraction. These are not small achievements. They represent millions of years of accumulated knowledge, suffering, experimentation, and refinement. And all of that, every year, every discovery, every mind, every structure, every question asked and answered and built upon, was insufficient protection against a picosecond timing error in a gate actuation mechanism and a crystalline defect too small to see with the unaided eye. The lesson is not that intelligence is futile. The lesson is more precise than that. The lesson is that intelligence, applied to the problem of extracting energy from a singularity, operates in a regime where the margin between controlled process and terminal event is measured in units too small for any civilization to reliably maintain across geological time. Not because they are careless, not because they are stupid, but because entropy is patient and civilizations are not. The universe did not punish them for their ambition. The universe does not punish, it does not reward, it does not observe. It executes its own laws with complete indifference to the outcomes for any specific configuration of matter that happens to have become briefly self-aware and energetically demanding. The black hole hums in the dark. The void expands. The clock does not stop. The universe is not a machine waiting to be operated. It is an executioner. And arrogance is simply a signature on a death warrant.